we go. Welcome everyone to this episode with my good friend Matt Van Giesen and me. We're calling this as a titular heading Nozzle Reaction. I'm Andy Prisco, and I have a deep and long-standing history in psychiatric care and service, crisis response, and the volunteer fire service. And with us today is Matt Van Giesen, who I met many years ago in an IFSTA Instructor 1 class when we were together. And Matt was the training officer for many years here in the Pacific Northwest at one of our island public safety agencies, and is doing a lot of interesting work today, and we've reconnected. And based on some of those discussions, with the work I currently do online in raising awareness and consciousness on how human beings can respond to anger, aggression, and violence, I've always made that analogous to how we respond to fire. I have found just a dear friend and teammate in Matt Van Giesen as we look downfield at the goalpost together, as we look at the seat of the fire together, and see things very similarly. And he's doing some very exciting things in leadership development. And I wanted to do this one-off episode, not in my typical uniform and not with my typical background, to really focus on leadership development in the fire service and what Matt Van Giesen is doing. Matt, welcome. It's so great to see you here. And in the green room before this started, Matt's been changing his background pictures an awful lot and sharing, actually, why don't you cycle through just a couple of them? There's one of you in a recliner in a burn room that's just terrific. It makes me think of that scene in that movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was training his tactical team on room clearing, and he was doing something similar. Do you have that handy, that picture?
Yeah, let me throw that up.
Oh yeah. So if you look closely, Matt, describe the picture. It's such a good picture.
Yeah, so we were doing a Fire Academy 1403 live fire in an acquired structure training burn. At some point in the towards the end of the day, we were doing some more advanced fires in a living room area. And off to the one side, there was a recliner chair. I pulled it in, sat down on it in front of the burn box. And as the crews would come down the hallway to enter the burn room, they were to my immediate right, where I could actually lean over, talk into their ear, put my hand on them. I could grab the nozzle if I needed to, and just help them along, get the feel for the nozzle reaction, for the effect of that. And it was just more of a novelty thing at the time, but somebody inside the building caught a picture of it, and now it's a legacy, I suppose.
Can you imagine what the crews were talking about after they came out and you were still in there waiting for the next one? Like not expecting to see you in a recliner chair in the environment.
Yeah.
Kind of an odd way to meet somebody in a burn room, in a completely relaxed posture, in their gear, just kind of, beaming confidence and then providing instruction on what to do. I just think that's brilliant.
Yeah, there's a few stories of lore out there regarding me, from teaching from a recliner chair in a burning building to using the bathroom in a burning house. Yeah, those types of stories, they circulate around.
Matt, you're speaking of
go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't get to choose my legacy, so hopefully they're kind to me. Let's just go with that.
Your legacy, your story has a very interesting arc from where you started, what you went through, and what you're doing today. And maybe it would be a great place to kind of build a foundation to
Sure.
a description of what you're doing today, to kind of hey Charlie, take it easy, to talk about that arc, how it started. And you don't need to name the agency, Matt, but
No, that's fine.
I think it's fair to say that one of our larger Puget Sound Island agencies is probably sufficient.
Sure. So yeah, I'm a third generation volunteer firefighter. Very proud of that. My grandfather was a founding member of the West Side Hose Company, which was a tiny little volunteer fire department in northwestern Pennsylvania. And then as long as I was can remember, my dad had been a volunteer firefighter in the same department. Through transition and growth, it was at a different station. Um, we were one of the largest fire departments in the county that and by far the largest volunteer and probably the busiest volunteer fire company in the county in that area. Regularly hitting with mutual aid calls, regularly hitting 20 to 30 working fires a month. So it was
Wow.
pretty, yeah. So we got a lot of work, and I was young, I was inexperienced, and I was indestructible. So
Weren't we all?
absolutely. I was young and foolish, and now I'm just foolish. So, yeah, we had a great time, jumping calls and getting mutual aid calls, building those relationships with outlying departments, and getting to work a lot of fires, doing a lot of training. I was very fortunate. My best friend that got me into the fire service, his dad was a master field instructor for the state of Pennsylvania at the time, and I was able to hop in with him and do pre-1403 instruction burns. So doing the training burns was kind of old hat to me by the time I relocated. So I joined the Navy out of high school, bounced around with them, and ended up here in the Pacific Northwest. I got out of the Navy. Typical story. Got out of the Navy, got hired by a local public utility agency. Found a woman, got married, settled down, and right around the corner from my house was a volunteer fire station. So once that's in your blood, obviously it's in your blood. You
Oh
can't
yeah.
get rid of it. Turned around, dropped an application, and they ignored me for 6 months. Finally got a call one time saying, "Hey, are you going to show up again?" And well, you never called me. Showed up about a year later because of my background. One of the other captains there approached me and said, "Hey, we have some vacancies. You have a lot of experience. You seem to have a good head on your shoulder. Why don't you apply?" I'd never considered it because riding backwards was the best in the world, I thought. Jumped in, did the assessment center, came out as a new fledgling captain of a volunteer fire department. At the time, we were running probably around 1,500 calls a year as a volunteer department, covering probably a good third of the island. Probably a standard mix, about 80%, 85% medical. We were doing fire-based EMT level EMS, no transport. That grew over time to well over 2,000 calls a year. We had the district split. We merged it into one giant district, and I was running fire command for the north end of the island about every 4 weeks for
Wow.
all hazard agency. I mean, we did everything from, we have the agency has a robust marine rescue program. They
Yep.
have a robust high angle rescue program. They do partner. We have a federal fire agency that's mutual aid with us, and a local city, and then another county that we border with. So we work with them, training, and again, all hazard calls. Started BLS transport along that period too. So the agency got bigger and bigger and bigger, and through time, as it does happen, burnout, a lot of burnout, and a lot of political issues with that growth. And about summer of, I think, 2019, I was burnt out to the point where I was having physical and some pretty significant mental issues. I backed away from the fire service. I was fortunate enough that I got the help I needed at the right time, in the nick of time. It saved my marriage. It saved my family. It probably saved me.
Right.
Over the next 2 years, recovering and COVID and everything else, and coming out of that, again, that firebug's still in me. So through the relationships I built when I was with that agency, some of my good friends at the city reached out last I want to say it was beginning of this summer, and asked if I would. They initially asked if I had any of my written plans for 1403 acquired structures. I did approximately between 20 and 25 acquired structure burns when I was with the county agency, NFPA compliant, starting out with just a basic check sheet to full on 20-30 page incident action plans, was the culmination of that. So they asked if I had that material. I gave it to them, and then, well, could you come look at our plan? And then
That's
from,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, can you look at our plan too? Would you walk through the house with us and see what you think of what we want to do? So it just kind of grew and grew. And before I knew it, they had me in bunker gear inside teaching again. And
How did that feel?
oh, it was amazing. It was
Yeah.
amazing having essentially hit rock bottom, physically, emotionally. I put on a ton of weight. I was unhealthy, just in a really bad place, to putting on bunker gear, going inside a house. I had been exercising, shed the weight, getting back to my normal self, and then throwing on gear and getting to go in and play in the house. And you know, how humbling. They treated me as a VIP all the way through.
Yeah, and what's interesting is when you were doing the work, that's not the
No,
experience of
because
most firefighters, you know?
no, because the people that do the job, that love the job, know the job, it's work. It's hard work. And that's what we love about it, because
Right.
as Brian Brush loves to say, hard work always works. And
Yeah.
he's spot on. It's hard work
Yeah.
from beginning to end. There's no easy job in the fire service, and no job's too small. So I mean, I'm trying to help. I'm trying to do all these things, and they're like, I'm trying to carry roll hose, and the guys coming over. I got that, Cap. I got that. So even though I'm a civilian, even though I consider myself a training adjunct to the city now, I'm still captain. They made me wear a red helmet. They gave me a brand new red helmet to wear. I said, it's going to get trashed. Give me an old beater helmet.
Matt,
They made me wear
I
it.
feel admiration and a little bit of envy. You know, what a wonderful thing to happen to you. And, you know, I wish
It was,
something like that would happen to me again.
and in May, I never saw this coming. It literally blindsided me. A few weeks after the burn, they were planning another. It fell through because of some insurance, property owner issues, some typical stuff. But then I got approached by the training officer from the department, and he was asking for help. What they were trying to do is, over time, organizations, any organization, through normal change and attrition, and dilution of a culture. You know, their culture has diluted over time for whatever reason. You know, the staffing, even though they're a combination department, the staffing levels there are no different than anywhere else. It's hard to get good quality volunteers to help staff. That's their backfill. And you know, you sometimes are forced to maybe lighten the standards. I don't want to say you lower the standard, but sometimes the bar, a great example, they needed to, an organization, I'm not saying they did necessarily, but an organization may need to promote, let's say, 4 lieutenants, and they set their expectation at a set level. They interview those 4 lieutenant candidates, and what they find is one of them is at the minimums, 3 of them are just below the minimum. But you know, the staffing, it's really affecting their operations. They feel they really need to fill these positions. So what they decide to do, we're going to go ahead and promote all 4 of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then what we'll do is, over the next year, we're going
We'll
to
have
go
you
ahead and
catch up on the prereqs.
yeah, and unfortunately, in my, you know, combined from when I started out of high school in the fire service till today, you know, I'm pushing 31 years. Now, I took some time off in the Navy. I was still active in my local department when I'd go home on leave, but I never left the fire service. I always read the books. I still was online. I was still keeping up with the technology and
You
the
couldn't dream
tactics.
of this stuff 10 years ago. The things that we do
No,
today.
oh my.
You couldn't dream that would even be an option back then.
No, not at all. So through all that, what ends up happening is they dilute their culture.
Yep.
They slowly erode that culture that they had. And when you do things like this, what happens is those new lieutenants, after about 2 or 3 months, they've got the bars on their collar, the bugles are there,
The
everything's
incentive
cool.
is gone.
The incentive's gone. Zero motivation to come in an extra night of the week, to do the extra training, to do that. So now that they never get to that bar. So now you've lowered your bar without intending to. So, you know, and
Or
that
not
creates
caring
that,
enough about it. I mean, knowing that there was risk when you did this, but the leadership
right.
wasn't there and the provisions were not there.
Well, look,
to-
we're all hammered on time. Tell me
Yeah,
who's not busy.
right.
Now, you show me a fire department that's doing their job and take me to their training department. I guarantee you, they've got piles of stuff they need to get done.
Yep.
I've never seen a good quality operations or training department in a fire department that wasn't just, oh my gosh, we need 10 more people to get this done.
Yep.
So you run out of people, you run out of time. Those are the two things, you know, time, and especially in a volunteer agency, is that is the commodity, is people's time. So rather than say, hey, we're not going to promote anybody, they were promoting people that maybe didn't need promoted yet. So now as a catch up, they're like, hey, could you do some strategy and tactic classes for some of our company officers? I was like, yeah, I can do that. You know, I'll come in on a Monday night, have 3 or 4 of them sitting in a room. We'll throw some digital combustion training videos up and we'll go for it, right? And as we talk more about some of the personnel, specific issues with specific personnel, we started talking more with the training people, and I kind of had this idea hatch of, oh, wait, why don't we back this up? First of all, I don't want to do digital combustion with these people yet. I haven't seen them run command. I worked with the organization, but I didn't work within the organization. There's a lot of rumors. There's a lot of innuendos, because I do know a lot of people in the organization. I want to be able to sit down with these people individually and look at them and assess them and get a feel for them. I want to build a relationship with them, because I want this focused on them. I want to see what's really going on with them, not what somebody told me about them. So I approached them and I said, why don't we do one-on-one sessions? Let's do one-on-one. I'll sit down with them, and I don't need digital combustion. I don't even need I'm just going to start with the cover of a fire engineering magazine, or maybe a YouTube video. So I sat down, the first individual last month. I've done 2 sessions now, one with one of their paid captains, and then I did another paid captain this week. Sat down with them, and just got to know them. We put it all on the table. I said, look, here's what happened to me. And I told them, and they've known me for, you know, close to 20 years working in the agency next door to them. They've run calls. They've been on calls that I was command on. I've been on calls as a company officer that they were command on. We know each other. We know the history of the organizations. We know the relationships of the organizations. We know the good with the bad and the ugly. It's all there. So I put it on the table. I said, this is what happened to me. You know, I basically had a breakdown. I got broken, and this is some of the reasons. What's going on with you? What's your, and I came up with a questionnaire. We started everything out with, I copy and pasted right off their website, the organization's mission statement.
Oh, beautiful, Matt. What a
Put it
great
right up there.
idea.
And that was question number 1. What is your mission statement? Because the reality is, everything we do within those organizations should be focused towards accomplishing that mission statement. That's where it has to go. And, you know, evaluating yourself. Are you doing that? Well, one of the things I love to tell them is, look, when I left the fire service, when I walked away, 6 months, 12 months later, when I looked at it, I looked back on it, and what I realized was all the issues, all the problems I had with the fire service, they came with me.
Oh, yeah.
They were my problems.
Oh, yeah.
Does the organization have problems? Certainly they do. Do they have issues? Yeah, absolutely. But the problems that I had with them were my problems. They were issues that I needed to find resolution for. Either I ignored the problems and kind of bottled them up, which was the majority of them. I chose not to confront them. So what issues do they have? So I spent both of the sessions were about 3 hours long. And in those 3 hours, we spent about maybe an hour actually talking tactics. And it was bare bones. I had a YouTube video up, and it was on pause. I played it for less than 10 seconds. We talked about real basic stuff. And the idea that I presented to them was, look, you guys are competent, capable fire officers. You guys know the job. You're career fire officers. I'm an ex-volunteer captain. I have no business being here. But let me give you little bit of advice, and say, you guys have the power to create a program to prevent all of the issues that you have today and all of the shortcomings that you saw when you became a fire officer. It's your job, and I'm just here to help. It's your job to create an officer development program for your organization. And both of them were like, oh, wow, we can do that. I'm like, yeah, let's
That's
do
the
that.
whole point. And it's amazing how the insight about one's leadership role in a fire department has also eroded over time.
For
Um,
sure.
you know, there are fire officers from the old days that if you had them all in a room, um, you know, you'd hear all the war stories and you know, the gestures of humility and heroism, the whole range. But everybody was clear about what they needed to do within the organization in terms of raising leadership from within,
Yeah.
really raising it. And we seem, at least it's my view, we seem to have lost that as a domain in the fire service. And what you're doing is um, your expression in the fire universe of leadership development for an organization that probably had a strong leadership culture. It erodes for a number of variables over time. Leaders identify how that erosion is playing out in practice, in service,
Sure.
attendance, churn, complaints, injuries.
Yeah.
And then they identify that they need leadership development at that point. So the culture now has eroded to where they can't draw from within to fix it. They have to go outside, and they grab Matt Van Giesen. And that phenomena that I just described of being good at something, erosion, we got to go outside to bring this back up. That's happening in all of public safety and public health, period. It's
Oh,
happening
absolutely. There's,
in
well, and we
law
both seen it.
enforcement, healthcare. It's
Yeah.
happening all over the place.
We see, and you and I've mentioned this before, is the risk avoidance mentality.
Oh
You
God.
know, we're so afraid of litigation, we'll do anything to avoid risk. And we're an all risk agency. I mean, fire service, there's nothing the fire service does that doesn't have risk. I had a fire chief, a good friend of mine. I mean, a great mentor, that I'm sure I'll be talking to him about this here shortly. And he pounded it. Everything we do has risk. We are designed and built around managing risk, not avoiding it. Our job is to manage it, because
Yes.
if we're avoiding it, we're probably not doing our job. And we get away with it. I mean, man, they're talking about digging a bunch of rabbit holes to go down right now.
Oh,
Well, let's start with I want to back up and hit on why me? Why me? Sure, I bring a great background. I bring the
you mean why you? Why did they call you?
right.
Yeah, that's a
So
great place to
because
spend a little time. Why,
yeah,
of all the places they could have gone, here's a guy who
number one, I'm
invested,
free. I'm
left.
free. I do it for nothing because it gets me. You know, I'm getting my kicks. I'm getting my hit on that fire service that I missed. So number one, it's free. That's not the reason. The biggest reason was, you know, I have the credibility, but I have enough relationship that there's already pre-established trust. But at the same time, you know, why they have a training captain? Why can't the training captain sit down with his officers one-on-one and work with them? Well, I'll tell you what, there's this thing we have called friendships. And friendships sometimes make it very difficult to tell the people around us that they're effed up, that they're not doing it right. You know, one of the hardest things when I started going to counseling was for my wife to accept that I was going to counseling. She couldn't get it. She's like, why can't you just talk to me? And she's got a valid point to some extent. Well, number one, I can't talk to you because some of the stuff I've seen and done in the world isn't stuff I ever want to share with her. It hurts me to think about it. Why would I give it to somebody that I love as much as my wife? I can't do that. And number two, with a counselor, I can say anything I want to that guy, anything. He will never, they will never use it against me. They'll never bring it up in a divorce settlement. The bridge doesn't, there's no bridge to burn.
They're paid to be non-reactionary.
Exactly.
They're
And
paid to make it.
non-judgmental.
Yes, they're paid to
I go in
be.
and I go in and
Yeah,
start arguing with my wife. I have a lot to risk there, a ton to risk. Everything that I've built over the
right.
last 20 some years is at risk if I mess this up. I can't be relaxed. So when I step into that, when I sit down in the conference room one-on-one with a paid fire captain, and we start a discussion on how that person conducts themselves on fire scenes and in the fire station between calls, and how they interact with their crew and what's going on in their life, what external things are distracting them. There's no judgment. I started out, like I started to tell you, it's fully transparent what I went through. But on top of that, I tell them everything we talk about in the room stays in the room. You know,
Fire
on a personal
leadership
basis,
counseling is what you're doing.
it pretty
Fire
much
leadership.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So I
profound.
tell them, look, I'm not going to walk out of this room and tomorrow morning knock on the corner office at the chief's door and say, hey, you got to pull this guy off the floor. He's a danger. I'm not doing that. That's not a risk. When he goes up for his next promotion or wants to apply to a class, he's not worried that there's a prejudice in there because, well, remember when we had that interview? Remember when we were doing that training on tactics?
Right.
Yeah, you didn't impress me any. So no, I don't think you deserved it.
Or
There's none of
worse,
that.
remember that thing you told me when you made a mistake?
Right.
I
Right.
have to share that. Like, whoa,
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's none of that. None of that's going on. It's all right there on the table. I'm not doing that. All I'm going to do is help. I'm just, you say counseling. I'm really just facilitating them working out their own problems. I guess that is counseling.
It is. It's
Yeah.
counseling in the purest form, because you're equipping someone with new capacity to regulate themselves. But I think what you're also doing, Matt, is you're raising awareness and
Sure.
consciousness about what it means to really lead, to lead others in higher risk conditions,
Oh,
and
sure.
to empower them to function optimally in those conditions without micromanaging.
Well, the last question throws them every time. And I talked to the guy this week, just what was it, 2 nights ago when I had him in for session. When we were talking, the last question, he just, it set him back. He's like, wow. And I was like, I know, that's crazy, isn't it? I said, in all the years I ran fire command, nobody ever asked me this. But
What was the question?
the last question, let me pull it up here on my, I want to make sure I say it exactly. It's a two-part question. Number one, what is your biggest fear as a company officer? And what is your biggest fear as a command officer? Because they're different.
Yeah.
And he was like, wow, and he opened up. He opened up. He was like, yeah, it's this and this, these are
Let's play with
what I
this for a
fear.
moment. Matt, let's play with this for a moment. In these sessions, what have you experienced as the most common answers categorically?
Well, I've only done two.
Okay. All right. Fair
It's
enough.
a very small
So
sampling size. It does vary, but the bottom line, I think the underlying, how they express it, the underlying fear is letting down their crews
yeah,
and somebody getting hurt. It's failure to their people and getting somebody hurt at varying degrees, and they may express it differently. But and I think when I look back, that was my thing. I mean,
fear.
I would actually, in my daily life. Now I'm a volunteer. I have a full-time job. I work 40 plus hours a week on average. I'm on call 24/7, 365 for the public utility that I work for. I have a wife and 2 kids, and they were busy in sports and academics and all the other stuff. And I always put fire department first because I had this underlying, it was a fear that if my guys or gals went to a call and it was bad and one of them got hurt and I wasn't there, that's on me. I needed to be there on every call because I could keep them safe. Because organizationally, I didn't trust the people in charge. I didn't trust the organization.
Imagine how your experience and perception would have been different if you felt incredibly confident in
For
the
sure.
leadership of the organization, where you knew that when you weren't working, people were going to be okay because the organization embodied these principles that you held so dearly and wanted to ensure that the people that you were responsible for also were imbued with those principles. Almost as if you're not doing it, it's not going to get done.
Right.
Which is an interesting conversation about rescue complexes in general. You know what I mean? But
Yeah, well,
there's a
rescue
reality.
complex and hypervigilance syndrome, and
Yeah, but
it opens a Pandora's box of other problems that you pile on.
yeah, but in the fire service, I think it's a rather big phenomena among many leaders who are good at their job in the fire service, where they don't have complete trust in the leadership structure or within other leaders in the organization because there's so much variance, and they carry with them this sense of responsibility that is placed as a result of their own distinct leadership characteristics, their excellent leadership.
Well, and we talked a lot, because the idea behind this program I'm doing with the city is that I guide, I kind of facilitate the officers of the organization developing an officer development program. The idea is that they, as a group, decide on some standardization, and I don't like boilerplate. I don't like standardized.
You
I like
can't when it
guidelines.
comes to leaders. You can't boilerplate it.
No. What we want though is what we want to see is if they all knew that they all were using ICS and that they were all using a standardized communications format. They were all labeling things aside, side A, side B, division one, division
Shared
two.
language is one thing. Shared principles.
Language is humongous.
Yeah.
And and that was one of them. How do good communication and ICS contribute to the mission statement? They have to think about that. Well, are you meeting your mission statement if you're running command this way or that way? And I'm very fortunate. They don't always realize this, but I sit down. I have all of their helmet cam video. I have all of their videos from security cameras in the neighborhoods from all of their incidents in the last probably 2 to 3 years.
And you review that before you meet with them?
So not for them specifically. I look at it. I don't want to approach it as a, hey, look, I went through your helmet cam videos. Honestly, what's going to happen as soon as I say
they're
that,
going to think this is an investigation.
This is them, arms folded, lean
Yeah.
back in the chair. The posture alone will be, what I want from them is open arms, leaning forward. Hey, this is cool. What are we doing with this? I want an open dialogue. I don't want defensive. There's nothing punitive for me. And again, back to that, why me? I can't do anything to them. They don't work for me.
Yeah.
So, but like I told the guy the other night, I was like, look, man, I reviewed a bunch of your camera footage. And because of the way you guys establish command, because of the way you set up command, because of the way you do face-to-face communication rather than radio communication, and a perfect example, it was a boilerplate, standard, everyday bread and butter, single wide trailer fire. And they show up, and I've got helmet cam from the engineer, and I've got some helmet cam from one of the firefighters, is what I think it was.
I'm aware of
hurdles.
big labor pushback on the use of video camera.
Oh, I'm in a union with the public utility company I work for. I'm in a union, and the union has prohibited the company from putting security cameras in our facilities, even though our facilities are being raided on a regular basis. Stolen generators, stolen equipment broken into trucks, stolen test equipment from trucks, you name it, happens on a regular basis. And the union won't allow them to because, oh, you're going to use it punitively. I'm like, come on, we have these things called MOAs that we can put in place that says the company cannot use them if that's really your issue. Or maybe, well, we're not going to get into that one. Maybe don't hire lazy shits that don't show up on time and leave early, and then that goes away. But so yeah, getting, and that segued into building an after action review program, because they don't have one. They don't have one, and so now they've got an issue now. It's been expressed from both individuals, again, different language, but the same feelings, that the after action reviews that they have now are basically, we do part of our investigation, we do statements. So we provide a statement of what we saw, did, heard, all that. And then on Monday night, the chief will get up in front of everybody and he's essentially given a press brief / summary of the event. But they're not on shift, so they may not be there that Monday night. So now everybody's sitting in the back of the room saying, that's not, I wouldn't have done it that way. That's not how I run scenes. They don't even have all the information. They don't know. They were at home sleeping. They didn't get up for the call. They don't know the weather. We're gonna do it again. I took this on. We're going to build an after action review program that involves actually creating a video document with the dispatch 911 call, with the radio traffic, with videotaped interviews using their statements, videotaped interviews with the crews that were on scene. And then a summary of that call, what happened with the timeline, put it all together. We're talking a 10 to 15 minute little video that we can post, and we can make them, depending upon the nature of the call, whether they're public release or whether they're internal release only. But on Monday night, instead of the chief getting up and doing his little summary and everybody armchairing it, they get to watch the video and be like, oh, there's the facts. There's the photographs. Holy moly, look at that. You can't even move in that house.
Matt, it's so brilliant because the phenomena that you described of essentially snapshot, armchair, kind of incident review process being the agency's formal approach. That's everywhere, man, in the volunteer service.
Oh, of course.
It's
everywhere in
everywhere.
the career service. It's all over. It's at work. I deal with it on a daily basis.
Where there's nothing formalized. Nothing is following a standard of practice when those things are reviewed, and it becomes an instrument for someone to exercise their personal expression instead of,
and now
what can we really learn from this?
And now you look at, why am I even being brought into this? Well, because we have some fire officers that may be lacking confidence. We have some fire officers that I wonder why. Because every time they run a call, the feedback they get, the feedback that matters to them, is from their peers. And most of it is armchair quarterbacking type stuff. Very little of it is maybe once in a while a chief will come by and say, hey, what were you thinking over there? Hey, that's a good idea. But they're not getting the proper feedback. The feedback loop is disrupted. That erodes a confidence right off the bat. It
erodes a culture, man. It especially,
ultimately it is. It's cancerous to that culture.
Yep. Especially if the level of review is generally from the same chief officer in a smaller agency, where the debriefing is from that person and their experiences from 15, 20, 25 years ago. And they're not really running around on the fire ground now anymore, but that's where the debriefing comes from.
And what's worse, a no review or a semi-critical constructive criticism review? Well, no review. Yeah. Hearing nothing, a void, is way worse than saying, hey, next time, remember we talked about this, maybe next time try this.
Yeah.
I understand, and actually have a discussion with your personnel about, so we'll see where that goes. One of the main impetus for doing this, their training officer is coming to the realization that organizationally they're going to lose their top 2 chief positions probably in the next 3 to 5 years or sooner, possibly.
Wow.
Okay. And it's normal attrition. And the chief's position, it's a city, so that could be up to the mayor and the city council. They'll appoint somebody, they'll hire. Or, there's a big fear that they could try to do like a fire protection district with the county, which that in of itself is that's a week-long podcast
So,
talking about
yeah,
all those
Matt,
issues.
so what you're doing now has kind of implications down the road that if
Sure.
you weren't doing it, what could evolve is incredibly different.
Yeah, I think the idea behind it is to maybe solidify, maybe bolster the culture that they want, the culture that they need, the culture that they had, and maybe the culture that they envision that they still have. Yeah, it's about repairing that and getting back to a culture that they want, so that if a new chief comes in and maybe he likes to do things a certain way, any chief worth their salt, any leader worth their salt is going to spend their first moments in an organization doing what? Observing. They're just going to observe. They're going to see what's working and what's not. And then they're going to start to add their flavor to it.
Yeah.
If he comes in, if this new she chief comes in, if this person comes into this organization and they look around and say, man, you guys just got your stuff together here. I like this. Ducks are all lined up. Yeah, there's problems, but you're working on them. You identify them. You have good feedback systems in place. I like this. Let's just tweak this and this. But if they come in and they see things jacked up, oh, look out. Look out. They'll turn the place upside down.
Yep.
Your culture, because nobody can dilute a culture more than somebody at the very top.
Yep.
I mean, you can't change a culture if the top does. It's so hard.
John Maxwell wrote this, Matt. He wrote it. It's called The Law of the Lid. No organization rises above the level of its leadership. And
no, it pours out the edges and then falls off to the side like somebody. Oh, me.
Well, listen,
no,
I think in the coming weeks, this is a pilot and an informal discussion, but we have a treasure trove of rabbit holes to go down, from wellness, humility. You had mentioned it in the green room talk, but and what you're really doing now is a form of fire counseling shadow work. You're bringing the fears that each individual leader has in themselves into the light and making them something that person can work with and integrate into their consciousness, so that they're clear-minded about what they're doing, when they're doing it, when it comes to leadership, particularly when raising other people up in the fire service or leading them in high risk conditions. And I got to be honest, Matt, I can't think of anything more important right now in our public safety agencies for services within the workforce to be aligned with what you're doing. Individual, not just counseling, individual personal development within the discipline, one-on-one, to raise leaders, and using some of the content of skills and tactics and method, but really getting to the heart of what are you afraid of as a leader, and how do we move past that together? I mean, that's like, it's what you've really done here is develop your own leadership intervention. Agency leadership intervention is really what I'm seeing here. And it's so encouraging. And then there are a host of other things that we're going to discuss about the current state of affairs in the transforming culture of the fire service, and what can we do to meet that demand, because we are seeing staffing issues, churn, attrition.
Oh, sure.
We're seeing it.
Well, you have your own story on it too that we
we'll get to that.
Into.
Yeah, what I just went through was one of the most I have not been made that angry in some time, and incensed with corruption and politics and things that have the least to do with serving others. I mean, I was incensed by it. So
people in the, we're in the state of Washington, and if you want to get into a political body that has no oversight, find a fire district.
Yep.
Fire protection district in the state of Washington has zero political oversight. They can do whatever they want.
And they know it. And
they
in
know
many
it.
cases, the
Yeah.
leaders know it. The boards of commissioners know it. And the only heat that can be brought to them, if any,
Is
I
the
did
voters.
see it, is the state auditor's offices can be pretty helpful.
The auditor can, but yeah.
They can't enforce anything. They
No.
busted out a large county for a lot of nepotism and malfeasance.
Yep.
And they've created the
did.
report, but nobody, there's
That's
no
all it is.
instrument. Right.
It's a report. And the idea, I think, behind it was that if you put that report out, then the voters can, but again, most voters, you know, we talk about this, and I push this issue a lot with in these courses that I'm doing too. What is the expectation of the customer? You know, in the fire service, our customer is the 911 caller. What is their expectation? And what you're going to find across the board is their expectation is really simple. Someone showed up. Because beyond that, they don't know. I mean, when I go to the grocery store, I have an expectation that the bagger at the checkout is going to put the heavy shit on the bottom, the light stuff on the top, right? I have expectations. Well, in the fire service, the only expectation they have is you showed up.
Yeah, and that leaves a lot of wiggle room for us to do anything else we want. We showed up.
Incompetence, they don't know because, well, what happened last time their house burned down? How did it go? Well, they didn't have it. How did it go last time you had a heart attack? I don't know. I didn't have a heart attack.
Right.
Before. What happened last time you totaled your Prius on the highway? I don't know. I've never done this before. They don't have a benchmark to measure against.
Right.
They don't know. The taxpayers don't know what they should be expecting from their fire service. I think deep down inside, if you were to poll them all and if you gave them hypotheticals, like it's 2 o'clock in the morning, it's always 2 in the morning in my mind anyways. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, your house is on fire, your child is trapped in the bedroom. What level of risk do you expect your fire department to manage there? What do you expect from them? Do you expect them to be like, hey, I'm sorry, your kids are going to burn because I can't put a firefighter in that building because all of these algorithms that have been presented over the course of my fire training say that firefighter survivability is not good? Or do you want them to say, hey, I'm going to risk everything I can to get your kid out. I commit to you. Because when I put on that helmet, when I put on those bunker boots, when I put on that gear and I sat in the front of that fire engine or in the back, when I put on that, when I answered a call, my commitment level was 110%.
I know it.
I was committed. I told my family this. Look, if I die rescuing somebody in a house, that's what I'm meant to do. That's what I signed up for. I don't want to do it. I'm going to train and do everything I can. I'm going to collect as much knowledge as I can to prevent that from ever happening. But I have made a commitment to the people that call 911 that I will risk everything I have to save one of them. That's the job. It's supposed to be the job. But what I'm not going to do is die in a motor vehicle accident in a fire engine on my way to a scene because I don't wear a seatbelt or because I let my driver exceed the laws of physics. What I will do is learn to put my bunker gear on really damn fast because that's what I can control. I can't defy physics. I can't make the fire truck go any faster. I can't go around turns any faster. I can't get to the station any faster. But I can put my gear on faster. I can have my shit in order so that when I leave my house, when the call goes out, I can get there quicker. I can do a lot of things to prepare myself. I can study the art of fire and fire behavior
and fire science.
I can do all of that. But those things are in my control.
Matt, I'm so glad we're on this journey together. I'm so glad we're on this journey together.
Another rabbit hole, Andy. Another rabbit hole. They're everywhere. I can't even move.
Well, listen, I think that, I think about an hour is,
I think we're good.
A lot for someone to sit with here. And I think, a great way to wrap up this discussion today is that we're in a place where leadership intervention is a viable method of helping our agencies if there are adverse events occurring. Markers, key performance indicators in the agency data that suggest we need to do something. The use of an external, credible, confidential source to work with the leaders within the organization to raise leadership competencies to attend to these kinds of events seems like a really smart thing to do. And I think, Matt, what you've pioneered here as a function, you kind of stumbled into it as a function of
Yeah,
your
yeah,
experience. You were in, you were out, you wanted some of that back. They had a need for it, and you
yeah.
found a place to meet where you're getting your needs met to serve and be of value in probably the most profound way you can right now, which is equipping others to be better leaders.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, it did. It just happened. It
Good.
just happened. Probably probably a career path that was chosen by somebody way above me.
Yeah, yeah, the big leader.
Yeah, the big guy. I always thought I was destined to be I really thought I got close a few times to being a career fire officer, and I thought that's what I was supposed to be. And then when it all fell apart, I really had to question a lot of stuff. But here I find myself in a place I never could have imagined existed, let alone that I would fit
You
into.
created it, dude. You
Um, it was created. I mean, it was a need, and yeah, like you said, it just through relationships and experiences with other people around me. Yeah, it's just and I can't just take things at face value. It's that critical thinking part of me that has to analyze stuff. So even like the after action review thing, um,
yeah.
I can't just let it sit. It has to be, no, we can't just say, let's sit down and talk about it. Let's do this. Let's make a video series. Let's make it into this. I can't just sit down and run a video and say, what would you do on this fire? I
I
have to
know.
say, why would you do that on a fire? I need
Yep.
to know why, because Simon told us start with why.
Yeah, Simon Sinek did say that. Start with why.
Yes.
That's a great place to wrap it up, brother.
All right,
Thank you
man.
so very
Thank
much for
you.
your time.
Great time, Andy. I look forward to the next one.
Me too.